I guess Torah Machzeras Halachsan Yeshala, coming back to where you did Torah before, it's a very comfortable feeling. It's like, putting on an old shoe. It feels very good. Anyway, it's a tremendous pleasure to be here, and today we're going to tackle one of the, relatively important questions about life, and that is, why are we here? Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu create us? What is the purpose of life? That's the question we're going to tackle today. So, what do you think Yiddishkeit says about that? What do you think Yiddishkeit says about why HaKadosh Baruch Hu created us? Anybody? Anybody want to volunteer? To serve him. Okay? He needs 7 billion waiters. Okay? Anybody else? I'm sorry? Bring Kavod Shemayim. Does that mean he's not feeling so good about himself? He needs us to honor him?
To get rewarded.
To get rewarded? To get rewarded? Okay. What if we're not here? We don't have to get rewarded. Huh? So the Mesilas Yesharim starts, and he says the most important question you could ask yourself, meaning, the most important question that exists, it's appropriate a person places all his effort and all his focus on one thing in life, and what's that thing? To ask, why are we here? Great question. Imagine you have a job in some big factory somewhere, and you're managing the place. I don't know, it's like there's 650 employees, except one small thing, no one ever told you what you're supposed to do. So after a while, you're going to be tired from twiddling your thumbs. You say, what is it I'm supposed to do in this place, right? And we're born into life and nothing. So he says the most important question you could ask yourself is, why are we here? And the answer is, V'ha'adam loy nivra ella. This is a very powerful way of phrasing it. A person was not created for any other reasons only. That means anything else you ever heard about this. Ma'am, you dropped something. Yeah. A person was not created for any other reason only, which means everything else that you're going to say about this is wrong, according to Mesilas Yesharim. Loy nivra ella. This is a very exclusive statement. Lisanagal Hashem, to take pleasure from the Almighty, and to enjoy His emanations. We were created so HaKadosh Baruch Hu could give us pleasure. What a concept. What a concept. But the first question, you're looking at me strangely, you say, Rabbi Milstein, that's not what they taught me, right? But you're not going to find there's a machlekes about this. It's not like someone else says something different. It's not what it says. So what does this mean? So the first question is why? Why would HaKadosh Baruch Hu create us for our pleasure? What does it do? So whenever you ask a why question, we're starting to judge motivation. If you're starting to judge motivation, you're going to find the two basic motivations in life are good and evil. If you think about all the things that you do on a regular basis, your motivation for doing things are either good, comes from a good place, or evil. It's not such a good place, right? All of us are like that to a certain extent. Sit down and think about two most basic. Of course, I'm oversimplifying, but generally speaking, it's correct. Either I'm motivated to do something because I have a good reason, I want to do something good, or I'm motivated to do something because I'm not doing so good. So, which one's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's? Obviously, we know the answer, but let's go through a little exercise, because after all, you're going to be teaching it to thousands of people soon, right? So let's go through a little exercise to understand this. There are two gentlemen who are working out in a gymnasium. One of them, we'll call him Arnold Schwarzenegger. In a previous life, Arnold Schwarzenegger was the governor of California. In a previous life, he was a movie actor. In a previous life, he was the world's champion bodybuilder, like 8 years in a row. I mean, this guy has muscles where you're not allowed to have them. I mean, unbelievable, right? Big, strong guy. He's working out at a gym next to another fellow who a month ago was a 90-pound weakling who got sick and tired of his buddies in school kicking sand in his face, stealing his books, and he could do nothing about it. He said, that's it, I'm really upset. I'm going to do something about it. And he registers and he signs up in the same gym as Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he's been working out now for about a month. What do you call a 90-pound weakling who's been working out for a month? A 95-pound weakling. That's correct. Right. Okay. You find out that after a good workout session, the two of them go home, and one of the two picked on someone weaker than himself and beat him up to make himself feel good. Quick, which one was it? Schwarzenegger or the weakling? The weakling. Why not Schwarzenegger? Because that's not going to make him feel good. Right? Listen to this carefully. Evil is always a result of a certain lack or need. It's always a result of chisaron. It's always a result of a certain lack or need. When there's no lack or need, even in a particular area, in a particular subject matter, then there's not going to be evil in that department. The one thing we know about Arnold Schwarzenegger is he's feeling pretty good about himself in terms of how powerful he is, and it's not going to make him feel one iota better to beat up someone who's even weaker than he is. Zero. It's not going to do anything for him. So clearly, evil is a result of a certain lack or a need. Kid goes to school. Your kid has a good day in school. She comes home, you're going to have a good day. But if she had a bad day in school, you're going to have a bad day. Her little brother's going to have a terrible day. Am I right? Because that's the way it is. If we're not feeling good about ourselves, that's the motivation generally for evil. Okay, Adolf Hitler. Yamach Shemai v'zichrei. Not a happy puppy. Joseph Stalin was said by his own mother to be the most miserable creature she ever met. Now, what do mothers usually say about their children? They'll interview a mother of a fellow who's a serial killer. They found that 14 bodies in his basement, okay? They interview the mother. What was he like as a child? What's the mother always say? Such a nice boy. Couldn't hurt a fly. Killed 14 people. Couldn't hurt a fly. That's the mother's job. Joseph Stalin's mother said he was the most miserable creature she ever met. I mean, just doesn't make sense, right? But that's the way it is. People who are evil have a tremendous lack or a need. There's a chisarayin. Let's take a Kadosh Baruch Hu. You got to admit he's a little bigger than Schwarzenegger, right? If it took unlimited power and unlimited genius to create the universe, which we can actually look at today, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu has no chisarayin. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is omnipotent. He's unlimited. And a being that has no chisarayin cannot be evil but only good. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is taif. Okay, I think all of you are good people too. But what if I'm to take you, good guy that you are, pluck you out of Brooklyn, and plunk you down to the middle of the North Pole where there's not even an ant or a cockroach to do chesed with? According to Judaism, are you still good? And the answer is no. Why? Because in Yiddishkeit, good is not a concept, it requires action. It requires doing. We call it derech hatoiv leitiv. It's the way of good to do good. You meet people all the time. In my heart, I'm very, very good. I say, that's great. Give me a phone number. If I know someone who needs a heart transplant, I'll make sure to give you a call. You got a good heart, right? Right? So, but it's critical that we understand that in Judaism it requires action. If I come to visit you, and I slip outside your igloo, and I skin my knee, and you come out from your igloo, and you bring me a Band-Aid, at that point you have defined yourself as being good, because you've done something to be good. Good requires action or execution. It's not a concept, it requires action. HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a universe all alone kaviyachol. How does he have an opportunity to do good? And the answer is he does not. So what does he do? Kisharatzali karei toiv, the Sefira Kabbalah begin. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu desired to express his goodness, he created the concept of a tzelem elikim, of a self-conscious, aware human being. That tzelem elikim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is aware, we are aware. And he created us in order to receive good from him. And what good does he give us? What does Mesilas Yesharim say? It's called pleasure. So this pleasure thing is serious business. It should not be treated frivolously. It means this is very, very important. The meaning of creation, the purpose of creation is that we were created for our pleasure. Now if that's true, that we were created for our pleasure, then we should take this pleasure thing very seriously and figure out how to take it to the max. Meaning, if someone goes to business school and he graduates with an MBA, now it's time for him to go into the workplace and make money. Does he want to make the most amount of money or the least amount of money? Of course, the most amount of money. So if I'm created for pleasure, what do I want? The most amount of pleasure, least most amount of pleasure. So what we're going to do is we're going to figure out what this pleasure thing is and how to take it to the max. How do we live our lives of 70, 80, 90, 120 years having acquired and amassed the maximum amount of pleasure in life? Is this a good thing to do on a Sunday morning? I think it's a great thing to do because I happen to love pleasure. I don't know about you, right? It's a wonderful thing, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So first we have to arrive at a definition for pleasure, because people who are not intellectuals, they will talk around concepts all the time. Hope and change and hope, hope. Nobody knows what it means. You know, they hope somehow that things are going to change when they do that, right? It's not the way it is. In Judaism, in Yiddishkeit, we need definitions. Without a definition, you can't say, you know what the Gemara says? My Hanukkah, what's Hanukkah? Everybody knows what Hanukkah. No. The Gemara needs a definition, what it's all about. Then you can start to discuss the halachas. My Hanukkah, what is pleasure? My pleasure, what is pleasure? So if I asked you what's the opposite of pain, what would you say? Pleasure. And you'd be wrong. Why? Because if you look up pain in the dictionary, it's discomfort or extreme discomfort. And the opposite of discomfort is comfort, not pleasure. So why in Western society do we have this concept that pain and pleasure are opposites? It's because we live a very decadent lifestyle. You know what decadence is? It's when you no longer want to invest in pain or effort to achieve pleasure. When you don't want to invest, we understand that pain and pleasure are not only opposites, but one is often the medium, the price that you have to pay to get the other. The things you can enjoy the most in life are the things you can invest the most effort or pain. It's just the way we are as people. But in Western society, we don't understand that. That's why we have a whole society of couch potatoes. And they call them couch potatoes because what are they doing? They're watching television, but they're too lazy, heaven forbid, to get up and walk over to the television set where they need to change a station, and they have a little clicker to go like this. That's what turns them into couch potatoes. They don't want to invest even in their own pleasure. Not that television viewing is such a pleasure, but that's another topic for another time. Okay? But that's called decadence. That's called decadence. What separates mature people from immature people is this concept of understanding that what is going to give you the most pleasure in life usually will involve the most amount of effort or pain. The more pleasurable it is, the more we are prepared to invest in it in terms of effort or pain. I'll give you a mashal that hopefully you'll never forget, and maybe you'll teach it to your children one day. It's that good. There are two men who are going to win medals in the Olympics. One's going to win gold and one's going to win silver. Who's going to have more pleasure, the gold winner or the silver winner? Gold, of course. Not so fast. I'm going to tell you the story behind the two people, and then we'll revisit the question. You ready? The gold winner. His name is Matumba. He's 6'7". He's all of 16 and a half years old. He lives in a small village in Kenya where there's no electricity or running water. His father, however, is the village doctor. He's middle class. And he's decided that his little Matumbala has got to go to get an education, just like he's educated. The closest school happens to be 14 miles away. So Matumba's life consists of, from the time he's 8 years old, of walking to school the 14 miles, attending school all day, and walking back at night. When he's about 11 years old, Matumba realizes he doesn't have much of a life. He says, you know what? I bet you if I ran the 14 miles, I'd have more time to play with my friends. Right? Probably Mancala, because there's nothing electric that works there, right? Okay. So he starts running the 14 miles back and forth, and that life gets a lot better when he's like 14. So he says, you run as quick as the wind. You got great legs. You come from Kenya, after all. That's where all the quick runners come from, right? You should try out for the Olympics. At 15, he tries out for the Olympics. He breaks a world record in the trial meet, okay? And when he runs the Olympics, he wins gold. Is he going to enjoy his prize? Absolutely. Why not? Let me tell you about the silver winner. This is a true story. His name was Jimmy. Little Jimmy Cunningham lost his entire family in a terrible fire that swept through his Chicago home when he was 3 years old. He was so badly burned himself that he lost all of his toes, and the doctors said he'd never walk. He was taken into an orphanage, where at the age of 5, he announced one day, I'm going to run the Olympics. They said, you're out of your mind. You should learn how to walk like a mensch first. And he did, on his own. The kid had so much spirit. He had such a heart that they went ahead and they hired a coach for him. And from the age of about 10 till the age of 23, he spent 4 hours every single morning at 4 a.m. working with coaches who in the beginning would just rub down his legs to get some feeling back into them. And the 1933 Berlin Olympics, Jimmy Cunningham won silver. True story. Who's going to enjoy it more? When Chazal tell us Lefum Tzara Agra, they're not kidding. It's true. It's one of the greatest truths that you're ever going to encounter in your life. It's what separates the mature from the immature. An immature person cannot forego an immediate gratification for the sake of a long-term pleasure. They can't do it. But a mature person can leapfrog over the things that are holding him or her back from achieving things, even though it could be very, very painful. We're all ready to invest a whole lot of effort or pain for the right pleasure. Everyone's ready to do it. You put a candy in your mouth, is that a pleasure? Sure it is. But what about a kidney-shaped swimming pool in your backyard? It's a bigger pleasure, right? What separates the two? About $180,000. How do you make $180,000? Pain or effort, work. You got it? We're ready to invest a lot more in the things that give us greater pleasure in life, right? So pain and pleasure are not only opposites, but one is often the price that we must invest to achieve the other. So they're not opposites. That's terrific. And the greater the pleasure, usually the greater the pain. Okay, we're going to talk about different levels of pleasure. Now, why would I put a pleasure in a different level? I'll put a pleasure at a different level, according to Rabbi Weinberg, at the point where all the pleasure in the lower level cannot be exchanged for even one drop of the higher level pleasure. As an example, someone's walking around in life with 5th class pleasure. That's the lowest class of pleasure. He meets someone else who's got 2 units of 4th class pleasure. He says, I'll tell you what, I'll give you $500 million of mine for one of yours. The fellow who's possessed of the 4th class pleasure would have to be certified insane before he was willing to do it. Meaning all the 5th class pleasure cannot buy 4th class. That's why you got to kick it up to another level. If it's not another level, you think that there's an exchange rate, and there really is not. So they're on different levels completely, okay? The greater pleasure is, the more pain it is, right? We understand the more effort is involved, right? And the other thing is, there's no exchange rate between one level of pleasure and the other one. I'm going to ask someone, I need a volunteer here, I'm looking for someone, I need to buy something. I need to buy, like they have these game shows, I need to buy something. How about at the pocketbook? Can I buy not the contents you could keep? How about I give you 100 for the pocketbook? Would you sell it to me for 100? 100. Maybe, yeah? Okay, you know what? Let's not quibble. I want you to feel comfortable. 250. What? Yeah, 250. 250, of course. 100, maybe. 250, absolutely, of course. You made a big mistake. Should I tell you why? You didn't ask me 100 watt or 250 watt. I was going to give you 250 agorot. Not of the current agorot. Not the 250 agorot that there's 100 of them to the old Israeli shekel. Not even the agorot to the new Israeli lira. But to the old Israeli lira, which means I was going to give you 150,000 of 1 penny. I don't care how much you don't like the pocketbook. It's worth more than that. That's called a bad deal, right? Okay, but let's not quibble. Let's not quibble, right? We could see here that all the old agorot in the world could not buy that pocketbook. So let's not quibble. Let's get to the point. What happens if I say $250 for the pocketbook? Now you say, absolutely. I'll give you the $250. You give me the pocketbook. You walk outside. Policeman slaps on the handcuffs. He says, you're going to jail. You say, why? You're carrying counterfeit. You're going to find in life there are real pleasures and there are counterfeit pleasures. What's a counterfeit bill all about? It pretends, it masquerades to be the real thing that you could buy something for, but in the end you can't. In the end you get caught and you can't. So you're going to find in life there are real pleasures and there are also counterfeit pleasures. There are pleasures. They promise to give you this positive feeling because a pleasure really is any life event that leaves you energized. And you can use that energy to invest back into your life. That's a real pleasure. You pop a candy in your mouth at the right time. It's wonderful. There's nothing wrong. It's a great thing to do. It energizes you. So what's a counterfeit? It promises to energize you, but it doesn't energize you. Sometimes it even leaves you emptier than you were before. So ultimately in your life you have to watch out for the real pleasures, to be able to distinguish them from the counterfeit pleasures in life, because then you get very disappointed in life because it doesn't deliver on its promise. Okay, 5 classes of pleasure are very similar to the 5 classes of airline travel. Did you know there were 5 classes of airline travel? You didn't know that, right? We're going to discover it right now that there are. What's first class like? Anybody ever admit to flying first class? I never find Jews who admit to going first class. You went once first class? Is it nice? Very nice. How wide are the seats? Very, very wide. How far did they recline? Into the next zip code. That's correct. That's it. It's a very nice way. But you know when you fly first class you get a little silly? You know that? You didn't know that? I'll show you. When you fly first class, they think that you're going to eat the crumbs off the tray that were there before you. So they give you a shmata to cover it, don't they? They give you a little tablecloth. You don't remember that? Come on. They give you a tablecloth there. They're afraid that you might take off your shoes and walk around, should excuse me, just in the feet. Right? So they give you little shmatas for your feet. Is that not true? Shmatas for your feet. They're afraid you might fall asleep with your eyes open, you know? Give you another shmata for the eyes, right? First class, a lot of shmatas, right? Good. What's second class called? What are they called second class? Because then no one would go that way. What, if I'm a second class person? They'll go that way, right? So what do they call it? Business class. I'm a businessman. Yeah, you're not a business. You're unemployed. Okay, but for now, I'm a business. Terrific. What's it like in business class? It's still nice? Beautiful way to go. Not quite as wide the seats and not quite, but you know, it's still a great way to go. What's third class called? Economy or coach. Economy or coach, right? Why don't they call it third class? It really is third class. Let's be honest. It's third class. Why do they call it? Because madach, no one's going second class. Kal v'chomer, no one's going third. Great, okay. You know what? It's the most effective way to fly, most efficient, because it gets you there the same time as the rest of the plane. So it has a little shoehorn hanging next to the seat so you can ease your way into it, right? But you know what? It gets you the same time, the most effective way to... What's fourth class called? Baggage. What's baggage like? Not very comfortable. Not very comfortable. There's no cushions, and you got to sit like on the floor, The air conditioning leaves a little bit to be desired. Pets sometimes have to go baggage. You know that, right? Pets also sometimes arrive alive. Anyway, so that's what's fifth class called? Pilot meets you outside the aircraft, ties a rope to the landing gear, and says, "Here, hang on." You're flying, but what are conditions like when you're flying fifth class? Wind speeds upwards of 550 miles an hour. Temperatures between 50 and 80 degrees below zero. Any flesh that's bothering you, you don't have to worry about. It will be removed shortly. What might a person do as he's being slammed against the fuselage of the plane at 600 miles an hour at 80 degrees below temperature? Let go. At some point, it's not worth the ride. People often ask me, Rabbi Milstein, talk about 5 levels of pleasure. I don't need 5 levels. I just need like the lower. I know you're going to talk about the lower levels of things that I like the high level of things Hashem likes. I know you're going to do that. So you know what? I don't need that. In my life, all I need is my simple pleasures that I'm fine, and you're dead wrong. Because it's just not true. There's a book that came out about 25 years ago. It was a best-selling book. Sold hundreds of thousands of copies upon its release. What was the name of the book? Final Exit. What's the topic of the book? 101 Ways to Commit Suicide in the Comfort of Your Own Home. And the question is, who bought the book? The book at the time cost $25. At that time, you could buy an illegal handgun on the streets of New York easily for $25. Today, it's about $60. But those days, it was $25. If you're so miserable, don't buy the book, buy the gun. What's the answer? Because when you're flying along in life, enjoying only 5th-class pleasure, it's very, very painful. But you're getting somewhere. You're flying. You're getting to where you need to go to. But ultimately, it's very, very painful. So you say to yourself, you know what, maybe I'm not ready to let go right now. But I'm sure thinking about it. And it could be the day that I'm ready to let go. It might be raining outside. I don't want to muss my hair. Let me have the book safely on my shelf, so just in case I'll be able to go. Right? It's true. The world is seeking happiness. They're seeking contentment. They don't have it. We have more pleasures in this world than ever were available before to humanity. You cannot even compare. There's no comparison. It's possible. And yet people are less happy than before. You have water systems like in London that are polluted by medications such as Xanax. This is absolutely true. Depression medication. The water table is being polluted in London today. There's so much drugs in the water. So many people are taking depression medication. Right? It's incredible. What's happening? And the answer is, you need all 5 levels of pleasure to be a happy, well-adjusted, and healthy human being. Kadosh Baruch Hu created it that way, and that's exactly what we need. We need the 5 levels of pleasure. Having said that, let's figure out what they are and how we take them to the max. 5th-class pleasure is the lowest class. It requires the least amount of effort. 5th-class pleasure is physical pleasure. What's physical pleasure? Any pleasure that you can enjoy with 1 or more of your 5 senses. Any sight pleasure, smell pleasure, hearing pleasure, taste, or touch pleasure is a pleasure, and it's a 5th-class pleasure. Hashem gave it to us, and it's terrific. And I want to ask you a question. Is it permitted? Is Torah against or for physical pleasure? For physical pleasure. I want you to bring me a proof that Torah is against being against physical pleasure. It's not only for it, but it's like radically for it. From the Nazir. The Nazir takes a vow of 30 days Nazirus. Why does someone become a Nazir? Because he sees someone who was self-destructed, their own family, a woman who did something really terrible. He says, oh boy, this is so terrible. How does it start with socializing? Haraya Saita Bil Kilkula. He has to separate himself from wine. What does that accomplish? It's great, because wine is the great social, mixer. It's what makes people come, to relax their inhibitions. And also grooming. You comb your hair, right? Try not combing your hair for 30 days and see how popular you are, right? So it's clear. It's great. And the Nazir at the end of his Naziris, which Stam Naziris is Shloshim Yaim, the least Naziris is 30 days. He has to bring a number of kabbanas. One of them is a carbon chatos. It's a sin offering. Why does he bring a carbon chatas? And Chazal seem to struggle a little bit with this. And Rashi brings down the Gemara. Rashi says, you know why he brings a carbon chatas when he seemingly did no averos? Lefi shetzier atzmei min hayayin. A very unusual lashon, a very unusual way of phrasing it. He pained himself from the wine. What do you mean pained himself? He just didn't drink wine. That's a pain. You see from the Torah that the unnecessary avoidance of a physical pleasure has some little piece of it that we don't learn from. He has to bring carbon chatas to teach us that we don't willingly walk away from a pleasure for no good reason. If you have a good reason, you should, but no good reason, you don't do it. Torah is being against physical pleasure. Incredible concept. So why does physical pleasure have such a bad reputation? Each of us has grown up, I think myself included, with this kind of sour taste in our mouth. Oy, tzifil gashmius, chibnius, people we understand. So why? Why is it that way? What's wrong with it? So there are probably many other reasons as well, but I'd like to focus on one that's my favorite. Physical pleasure, taken to its extreme, without any kind of control or discipline, eventually stops giving you pleasure, and even worse than that, it becomes disgusting. Take as great as it might seem in your head, a party, whatever it's going to be, do it over and over and over and over again, it loses its thrill. It stops delivering on its buzz, and eventually it becomes nimis, it becomes disgusting. Take a little child, little baby. Little babies are the cutest things on earth. It's the most amazing thing just to pat their cheek like this. They got a little peach fuzz on it. It's the smoothest thing in the world. You go, oh, it's so sweet. Right? It's a great feeling. Right? Do it for 6 hours straight. First the kid bites your finger off, right? Like, leave me alone, right? And then you say to yourself, what is it that I'm doing? This is like stupid. I mean, it's like nuts. Anything which is purely physical, you do it over and over and over again. Now we have these powerful associations with these things, and we think because society tells us this is the best thing out there, that we do it over and over again, and then we wonder, how come I'm not having fun in life? How come I'm not enjoying it? Like, what is it that you could do repeatedly over and over and over and over again that gives you a little more sensation than what you've been doing? And there isn't. What is purely physical, eventually the joy goes away from it. You're going to find the more things are physical, the more they're regulated by Torah. What a concept. The less things are physical in life, the less they're regulated by Torah. How many hilchos machshava are there? How many halachas are there regarding your thought? Like 2. How many halachas are there regarding food? Which country in the world has the easiest time acquiring its own food? Its citizens have the easiest time acquiring food. That's right, this one, the United States of America. Right? They have the easiest time, cheapest prices, most plentiful. Which country has the least healthy relationship with food? No, this one. High blood pressure, diabetes, obesity. We take the cake, I mean, so to speak. Right? It's true. It's absolutely true. Right? Why? Can you see that easy come, easy go when we start to misuse food for the wrong reasons? When it's not regulated, it's not difficult, and there's no effort that becomes involved in it, what happens is you misuse food. So you're having a lonely day, you finish a tub of Klein's ice cream. You're having a difficult day, you might go out on a shopping spree and buy things that you really, really don't need in life, am I right? Go to the supermarket when you're depressed, it's the worst time to shop, forget about it. You bring stuff you're not going to eat for a month of Sundays, right? So what is it that you need to do? So the Torah goes ahead, and the Torah gives us very specific halachas of food. Before you put a morsel of food in your mouth, it has to be kosher. Years and years ago, I worked for the OU, not in the kashrus department, but I have many friends in the kashrus department, and it took thousands of human hours to declare a single food product that was processed kosher. Thousands. Chemists and rabbanim and food specialists, on and on and on and on and on. It's incredible what goes into it. And by the way, we pay more for this food because of that hashgacha. Why do you pay more for it? What does payment represent? Effort. There's more effort that goes into it. What bracha rishona you make? What bracha you make before you put a morsel of food in your mouth? So some people think it's very simple. It's not so simple. Have a soup with many different ingredients. I know certain people that their soup every single night has the previous 4 suppers ingredients in it, right? They put together a stew. What bracha do you make on this thing? You have to learn your halachas. You have to know it. You're not allowed to eat achila gasa. Eat human portions, right? And finally, at the end, birchas hamazon. Food is very, very regulated, and I haven't even touched the halachas about meat and basar v'chalav together. I haven't touched that. It's very, very regulated. If you're a thinking Jew and you recognize what goes into this morsel of food before you put it into your mouth, you could live a much more healthy life. Enjoy your food for the rest of your life. Go eat. Enjoy it. There's no problem with it. But make a good bracha, do what you need to do, and make sure that you control and discipline your eating, and you will continue to enjoy it for the rest of your life, and you won't use it hopefully as a crutch for some psychological or emotional need that you have. But go ahead, figure out, think about it. More something is regulated, the more it's physical. That's just the way it is in Yiddishkeit. So we understand clearly that physical is great, it's fantastic, it's terrific, provided it's done with control and discipline. They enjoy it for the rest of your life. There are many people who find some of the most amazing pleasures in life to be boring, and they go to psychologists for it, and the psychologists say, you know what, maybe you should break away from it for a little while. Maybe you should try to discipline. Duh. We've known that, right? 5th class pleasure is magnificent, it's fantastic. The finest of all 5th class pleasure is something we call money. Because money can be exchanged at any point in time for any physical pleasure. If there was no such thing as money, you'd have to find someone who likes the pleasure, who owns the pleasure that you like, and you have to make an exchange with him, right? But if you have money, you can acquire it at any point in time. Money is the best physical pleasure. Then the question is, what's 4th class pleasure? When what I said earlier, there's no exchange rate, it means all the money in the world cannot purchase 4th class pleasure. What could it be? And the answer is ahava, love. Ahava cannot be purchased for all the money in the world. There's a family living in Meir Sharm who call them the Schwartzes. And the Schwartzes are a typical family, Meir Sharm. They have 14 children, and the husband works 3 jobs just to make ends meet. The kids are scrubbed and healthy and happy, but their pants are threadbare around the knees and threadbare around the elbows, their shirts, right? That's the way it is. It's Yerushalayim. One day, Mrs. Schwartz is home alone with the 3 youngest. The 11 older ones are all in yeshiva. A knock comes out the door, and a very nattily dressed gentleman is standing there. And she says, can I help you? And the fellow says, yeah. Are you Mrs. Schwartz? She said, yeah. I'm Mr. Schwartz, a distant cousin of your husband's. I understand you have 14 children and no money. She said, that's a pretty fair summary. I have the opposite problem. I have a lot of money and no children. I propose a swap. I'll give you $14 million for any one of your kids. I'll treat the kid extremely well. One small thing, you'll never be able to see or speak with your child for the rest of your life. What does Mrs. Schwartz say? What are you, crazy? Are you out of your mind? Get out of my house. So wait a second, Mr. Schwartz, don't be so hasty. Maybe you don't live in the realm of money and therefore you don't recognize how much 14 million is. Look outside. She looks outside, there's a Brinks truck parked there. That truck is filled to the top with $100 bills. Oh, it's only got about $1 million in it because that's all you can fit on a truck. There are 13 more parked around the corner behind it. What do you say now? She says, get lost. And she slams the door in his face. That night her husband comes home from his third job. He's like, anything interesting happened today? And she says, well, actually, now that you ask, a cousin of yours came from Mecca, Michigan, and he offered $14 million for any one of the kids. The husband says, did you take it? She says, of course not. He says, do you know what this means? And he doesn't wait for the answer. He runs to the bedroom where the youngest of his children is sleeping. Mind you, it took 3.5 hours to put the cranky kid to sleep, right? Picks him up out of the crib and starts picking him up and down, pinching his cheeks back and forth. 14 million. He says, what is it about this thing that's worth $14 million? And I got 14 of them. I'm a multi-millionaire. And that a unique appreciation for his children lasts until the next evening, when a spontaneous food fight breaks out among his children. There's a meatball that's stuck to the ceiling that hits him on the head when he walks by. At that point he loses it, right? It's incredible that all the money in the world cannot buy one iota of love. So the question is, what percentage of the world's population goes out to freely acquire fifth-class pleasure and gets to enjoy it? What number is that? About 100%. Even if you're a slave, chas v'shalom, and it's working on a hot day, there's a gentle breeze that blows it, it's a pleasure. And what percentage of the world's population gets to freely acquire and gets to enjoy fourth-class pleasure, love? Not more than 48%. Because that's the rate of divorce that exists, 52%. So the question is, marriage in secular society is such a colossal failure. Why does anyone undertake it? You know the game that they call Russian roulette? How's that game played? Take a gun, you empty the bullets, you put one bullet in one of the chambers, you throw the cylinder around, and you don't know where it stops, then you play chicken with your friend. Click, hopefully. Right? What's the chances you blow your brains out with that game? 1 in 6. It's a lot safer than marriage. It's 1 in 2. Am I right? So some people say, well, marriage, a bad marriage, it's not like death. You want to bet? That's what Chazal tell us, Marmi Maves, right? It's horrible, it's horrific. Why do people still undertake it? If I invented a headache tablet, 50% of the time it took away a headache. The other 50% of the time, the person died. No one's taking the pill. So why do they still undertake this for? And the answer is, the counterfeit of ahava is so alluring, it's so powerful, that people get swept away by it, and they think they're really investing in love, and they're not. There's a certain allure that exists for the counterfeit, which is so powerful, that puts people into a daze. They become so attracted, they fall in love. They become so attracted, and really has nothing to do with love. Has nothing to do with love. It's called infatuation. And infatuation masquerades as love. It seems like love because the person can think of nothing else 365, 24/7. So what's the difference? They're polar opposites, because ahava is all about giving, and infatuation is all about taking. Ahava is all about knowing the qualities that you bring into a situation, to a marriage, and finding the perfect recipient to receive them, because it's all about giving to someone else. And if your partner has the same concept, and it's all about giving to someone else, the two of them concentrate on the giving part. There's giving, there's taking, there's a marriage. What happens when one party stops to give? They're just waiting to receive. Marriage falls apart. While infatuation is all about taking. Person might have a certain look, a certain reputation, a certain celebrity, a certain bank account, a certain ability to throw a basketball, whatever it is. And ich will, I want this. I'm going to take it for me. This becomes mine. That's called taking. It's the opposite. Most of the world does not invest in love. Most of the world invests in infatuation. Infatuation is the opposite of love. Infatuation is all about taking, not about giving. It's an incredible thing with marriage. Marriage, or love, requires a much bigger effort than fifth-class pleasure, and that effort is the effort to commit to give for the rest of your life. What you put into a marriage, you take out of a marriage. It's the effort of putting in the giving for the rest. My dentist has a fantastic poster. The poster reads, marriage is a lot like your teeth. Ignore them long enough and don't worry, they will go away. It's true. You want to wreck a marriage? Just stop giving. It's very easy. Just stop giving, you wreck a marriage. It's all about giving. They're polar opposites. So people say, how do I know the difference? Because infatuation feels like it. The person's thinking about nothing else 24/7, right? So I feel, how do I know? Do you ever hear the old adage that says that love is blind? It's sheker v'chazor. It's not true. Who loves you more than anybody? Generally your mother. Who knows your faults better than anybody? Generally your mother. Right? Love is a magnifying glass. It's not only it's not blind, but infatuation is blind. If you think somebody's perfect, you're in a whole lot of trouble because nobody's perfect. It means you've just lost your senses and you're just being swept away, and that's infatuation. Right? Love is not blind. Love is a magnifying glass. Fourth class pleasure is fantastic, it's terrific, it's wonderful, but doesn't get to change who you are as a person. For that you need third class pleasure. What do you call someone who's broke, depressed, and single? Broke, depressed, and married. It doesn't change who you are as a person, right? But third class pleasure gets to change who you are as a person. Not only that, third class pleasure is so powerful that every one of us sitting in this room right now is ready to give up his or her life to achieve it. You don't believe me? I'll show you. Chas v'shalom shouldn't happen here or anywhere else. A terrorist walks into the room, puts a gun against your head, he says, you and me are going for a little walk. And he takes you to a preschool where 15 angelic little children are playing. And he says, either you kill all these children, and he gives you a gun that's been special engineered that you can't use it on him, or I'm going to kill you. What are you going to do? Say, kill me? Say, kill me? I'm not going to kill the children. I say, why won't you kill the children? And you're going to tell me, because it's wrong. You're a rabbi. You should know it's wrong. Come on, it's wrong. I say, you never did anything wrong in your entire life? He says, sure I did. Well, why not do another one? This would be a pretty good day. No, this is too wrong. I said, let's not quibble. Why won't you do it? The answer is because no one ever wakes up in the morning thinking they're going to do something wrong. We don't do wrong things. You know what we do? We confuse ourselves into thinking that something which is wrong is really right, and then we do it. Until we don't convince ourselves, until we don't rationalize it, we don't do it. You catch a bank robber red-handed with the money. He says, why'd you steal the money? He says, hey, I got kids to put through college, just like the bank president. I'm taking what's due me. You say, do you? What does that have to do with you? Right? They tell a story about a United States senator who's walking the streets of Washington, and he's accosted by a mugger. The mugger sticks a gun in his ribs and he says, give me your money. And the senator, who's somewhat inflated, says, do you know who I am? And the mugger says, I don't care who you are, give me your money. He says, well, I happen to be your senator. He says, okay, give me my money. We rationalize. And the more something is wrong, the more you have to stretch to rationalize until you come to the point where Hitler in Mein Kampf told us the reason why he was going to exterminate the Jews. Because you see, the Jews are the worst scourge that's ever visited the face of the earth. And I'm going to take care of this little I'll relieve the world of this issue. And he writes, and I quote, I am the redeemer of mankind. Not only he's not bad, he's Mashiach. Because you see, you got to be Mashiach to commit genocide. You got it? The more you rationalize the irrational, the more we consider you to be absolutely crazy. I'm not saying that Hitler should not be faulted for what he did. He wasn't crazy in that sense. But he departed from a normal pattern of thought. There's no question of that. Third class pleasure is the pleasure of doing the right thing. Doing the right thing is so powerful that we're ready to give our lives for it under the right circumstances, where we're sure it's the right thing. If you're not sure, you're not going to do it. But where you're sure it's the right thing, we're all going to. So you say to yourself, wait a second, Rabbi Milstein, I do the right thing 100 times a day, and I don't seem to get pleasure. Fifth class, yeah, I enjoy that. Fourth class, yeah, halavai Rabbi Shalom, I hope so. But third class pleasure, I do the right thing all the time. It does nothing for me. Why is that? And the answer is because it requires a greater amount of effort. The effort that's required in third class pleasure is overlooking the effort or pain it took to get there. If you're going to have rachmanis on yourself on how hard it was to achieve a davar tov, you're never ever going to enjoy it. Here's a mashal. You're sitting in a park, sipping on a soda, minding your own business, when suddenly you notice you have too much money jingling in your pocket. You brought today to the park a total of $1, a $1 bill. The soda that you bought at the grocery right opposite the park, 75 cents. The guy handed you a quarter and change. Now there are 2 quarters jangling in your pocket. You put your hand in your pocket to investigate. You find that one side of one of the quarters is very, very sticky. Must be he gave it 2 quarters stuck together. He says, okay, what's the maximum pleasure I get if I keep the money? Fifth class. What's the maximum pleasure I get if I give it back? Third class, doing the right thing. Let me see if Milstein knows what he's talking about. Let me go into the store. You go into the store, you give the guy back the quarter. He says, mister, you gave me an extra quarter in change. He looks at you and he says, God bless you. I've never seen someone this honest in New York City. Wow, that's terrific. Anytime you need something, you come back to Pedro, I take good care of you, right? How do you feel at that moment? Like $1 million, it's the best investment of your life. Every investment you should have should be that effective. Cost you 25 cents, you get a return of $1 million. That's great. You go back to your park bench, and you're sitting down, you're really shepping nachas from yourself. You did the right thing. You say, you know what? Milstein knows what he's talking about. This is great. This is terrific. When suddenly, out of the corner of your eye, you notice that there's a panicked man running at the other end of the park. It's 85 degrees. He's got his collar up, turned up. And he has this panicked, frightened look on his face, and he runs the other side of the park. It's New York City. Stranger things happen. Big deal, right? When suddenly you notice there's a package lying on the path that the man just ran, which wasn't there before, you're absolutely positive it was not there before. The man dropped the package. You say, wait a second, for 25 cents I felt like $1 million. How am I going to feel if I give back a whole package? So you run out of your seat, you scoop up the package, and you take off in the direction of that man. Hey, mister, you dropped the package. This way, that way, this way, that way. Ain't coil vein under, there's nobody there. You know, it's something great about third-class pleasure, doing the right thing, that even if you don't succeed, you still feel good. Say, hey, I tried. It's almost the same pleasure, you should know. I tried to do the right thing, even if you didn't succeed, it feels good, it feels great, right? Okay. You go back to your seat, you sit down, and your curiosity gets the better of you, and you start to wonder what happens to be in this package. So from a frayed corner of an envelope is sticking out a $100 bill. Now you open the package. It's got 500 of them. Let's see if your tuition money was worth it. That's how much money? No, it's $5,000. $50,000, that's correct. $50,000. Your mind races to halacha class. A lot of keeping, you have to give it back. Well, you see, it was a public domain. It was a shasarah, it was a park. Okay, that's one of my favorite. It's got no simon. There's no... Two of my favorite. Really, it's mine. Wow, thank you, Hashem. But then the Jewish guilt kicks in. The guy looked like a frum guy. He looked like he really needed the money. You don't walk around the street 50 grand unless you really need it for something important. Say, I can't just keep it. Say, no, I'm going to compromise. I'll wait an hour. If he comes back, I'll give it back. If not, it's mine. You wait an hour and you engage in one of the most pleasurable experiences known to humankind. It's called spending someone else's money in your mind. And that kitchen is all designed, and the vacation is all planned, and that new car is sitting in your driveway, right? Well, time flies when you're having fun. The hour is up. There's no sign of the guy. You take the package. You start hopping and skipping and jumping your way home. When suddenly you hear hurried footsteps behind you. You turn around. It's the guy. He says, did you happen to find something? And he's crying. And you say, like what? He says, don't mess with me. They kidnapped my 2-year-old baby girl. And they threatened to kill her. And I called the cops. The cops said, don't call us. Do whatever. They're such a violent gang. They're liable to do it just out of spite. Just do what they say right away and then come back to us. I scooped up the money from all my friends. I went wherever I could to borrow the money. I can't believe on the way to the drop-off point, I dropped the money. And now he grabs it. He says, for the life of my baby, please. Is he not going to give it to him? So you take the money and you give it to him. And before, when you did the right thing for 25 cents, you feel like $1 million. Now you did $50,000 worth of the right thing and you feel like 2 cents. What happened? Because the pain of giving away $50,000 is tremendous. And if that's what you're going to focus on, you're going to be bitter about it. Why did I have to do that? I should have left right away. Why do I want to make a cover? Why do I have to be such a goody two-shoes, right? Except for 20 years later. 20 years later, you walk into a room, you're einik lecha playing. And one turns to the other. Bubby Shiffy is here. Let's get out of here quick while the going is good. No one says, what's so bad about Bubby Shiffy? Are you kidding? Every time she comes, she tells us that stupid story about the time she gave away the $50,000. And you will. Because once the money dissipates, you'll be left with one of the proudest achievements in your life. And you find yourself at parties sitting next to strangers at a chasna saying, did I tell you the story about the time I gave away $50,000? And to complete strangers on airplanes as well. That's human nature. It's the way we are. Because once the pain of the money begins to dissipate, you're left with the pure joy of having done the right thing. And it's something that lasts a lifetime. It answers the question of how to build self-esteem in our lives. There are no 1,000 ways to build self-esteem. Self-esteem is only built by making good moral decisions by your own value system. And you can't fool yourself. You could look bekavadik, you could have a nice home, you could have a nice car, but if inside you know that you're no good, then you have this inner conflict that's raging all the time because you suffer from a lack of self-esteem. Self-esteem can only be acquired by doing the right thing. And we all know that it's very difficult to excel when you don't have self-esteem, because people don't have self-esteem rarely will invest in a situation which is not a surefire return. We're afraid to go ahead and risk and risk taking a chance, risk our emotional vulnerability when we're not confident, and confidence is only built from self-esteem. Third-class pleasure is magnificent, it's fantastic, it's doing the right thing. Doesn't hold a candle to second-class pleasure, though. It's like, what could second class, better than that? Absolutely better than that. Second-class pleasure is the pleasure that helps us to address the question of why bad things happen to good people. Is that a big question people have? Big question. It helps to address the question, why bad things happen. So what could second-class pleasure be? I'm going to paint you a word picture. There are three people who are standing with jackhammers digging at a work site. One of them, we'll call him Vito. Vito seems to be a perfect human specimen. He's got muscles all over, and he's standing with this thing, and he's shaking his very heavy shovel, and he's like flexing his muscles back and forth. You can see he likes having big muscles. You say, Vito, how come you work so hard? He says, me? This is the greatest job I can get. Look at this. From this exercise, I look like I look. This is fantastic. What pleasure is he deriving from his job? Fifth class, physical pleasure. Guy sitting next, his name is Nunzio. You could not mistake him for Vito. He's got a big beer belly, that shakes together with the thing. I say, how come you work so hard? He says, me work hard? This is the greatest job. I say, why? I got 4 nice boys at home. And I'm not going to let them work like this. This is the most money I could make, and they're going to go to the best colleges. They're going to have the best education. I'm going to get them malacha kalanakia. They're going to have a great life. What pleasure is he deriving from the same activity? Fourth class, he's loving his children. Third guy is wearing a suit and tie and shine shoes, politely standing with this jackhammer. You say, hey, what are you doing here? You're not even dressed for the job. He says, well, I don't work here. I said, well, what do you do? I'm an insurance salesman until 3 o'clock every day. But you see, 25 years ago, I had a niece that passed away from a very rare childhood disease. It was considered incurable. And as I watched her waste away, I felt so frustrated. I said to myself, if some doctor ever discovers a cure for this disease, I'll do whatever I can to make sure it reaches the maximum number of children. So from 3 to 5, I come here to volunteer every single day. Yesterday, the truck driver didn't show up. I drove a truck. Day before that, the messenger boy, I got no pride. I got to do what I got to do. What pleasure is he deriving from the job? Third class, he's doing the right thing. But this Dr. Smith, who used his entire lifetime of research, of work, of development, in order to bring about the cure, he's experiencing second-class pleasure. We call it the joy of discovery. Going beyond where humans went before. We as human beings are limited. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is unlimited. He's the creator. That means he could create yesh mi'ayin, something from nothing. We cannot do that, but we can assemble all the yeshes that we have and create a new result. And it's the koach hachidush that results from that, and we feel creative and we feel a little like a Kadosh Baruch Hu. It's an awe that we feel. All of us have the ability to get involved and change the world at some level. Mr. Weber, who created Hatzalah, Mr. Weber Gesundheit, Meves Umshana, created Hatzalah. There's not a second on the clock where someone's life isn't being saved somewhere out the world. He's living constantly and basking in the glory, really, of second-class pleasure every single second. That's what he does. It's absolutely incredible. We can fix people's shoes better. There are many ways we can change people's lives. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to be Albert Einstein, you don't have to be the rockets, you don't have to be the doctor, you don't have to be anything. But if you take all of the experience that you have, and all the agia, all the effort you put into it, and you bring about a new result for the betterment of yourself, betterment of the world, for your spiritual betterment, it's second-class pleasure. It happens to be the joy that's inherent in learning Torah critically. If you ask a Geshmak HaKasha and you have a Gavaldik Teretz, it's the joy you're going to feel. It's the joy that teachers feel when they bring out the best in their students. And that's why we can get away with paying them absolutely nothing, and they come back for more year after year after year. Second-class pleasure. Bring out the best. Creative, use a creative. That's the way it works. That's really the way it works. Second-class pleasure is fantastic. It helps to answer the question, why bad things happen to good people. Let me give it to you very, very briefly because we're running out of time. I'm in Denver, Colorado, approximately 20 years ago, doing a discovery seminar. And we have a session called Stump the Rabbi. The people who like the seminar like the session. People who hate the seminar love the session. They're going to stump the rabbi. And I've been doing it for a while. I'm having a good time with the people. They're throwing out questions. I'm being a little funny, a little flippant. And then I'm stumped by a 16-year-old. He raises his hand and says, Rabbi, why do I have such a rotten and miserable life? I said, I'm sorry, what's wrong? My mom, she's nuts. I said, I wouldn't get too excited about that. I know a lot of 16-year-olds who feel exactly the same way you do about their mothers. He said, no, my mother's really crazy. I said, what do you mean? When I was 3 years old, Child Welfare Services came into the house with a warrant. They arrested my mother and they took me away because my body was covered with bruises and cigarette burns. When I was 10, they gave her a lawyer for free and she sued them. And since I'm the age of 10 until now, for the last 6 years, every single day is a living Gehenna. Why did Hashem do this to me? I'm in front of 350 people. I look up, I say, Hashem, why are you doing this to me? What am I supposed to answer, right? So Rav Shalom Shvadron Zechar Levracha once told me, if you get stuck, and you mean a bissel l'shem shemayim, you have a little bit l'shem shemayim, Kadosh Baruch Hu shik shoinzu, Kadosh Baruch Hu sends a machshav in your head. I said, Rabbi Shalom, this would be a really good time. And an idea flew into my head. I said, young man, first of all, I don't even know why bad things happen to me, so I can't answer that question. Number two, is there anything I can do to help? Please let me know, I want to help. Number three, the most important, 25 years from now, I walked into a Barnes & Noble and I saw they had a best-selling book in their hands. And the book was called How to Stop Child Abuse Forever. And by every report, it was wiping out child abuse in vast regions of the world. One of the most successful books ever written on the topic. I wouldn't be one whit surprised to see it had your name on it as its author. And it's clear to me that if you hadn't gone through what you went through, you wouldn't have written the book. Why do bad things happen to good people? Turn them into great people. To the extent that we can seize the opportunity and invest that level of effort, like some people have to go through in their lives, but we do it voluntarily. And we hit the books for 14 hours a day. And we're Oivdei Hashem, we do what we need to do to get... Maybe you don't have to go through that. I don't know. I'm not an expert in this. But one thing is clear to me. Every one of us, when something bad happens to us, it's very important to examine and say, what greatness am I being prepared for? When I come out of this thing, what skills will I have to improve my own lot, the lot of other people, my own ruchnius that I didn't have before? Rather than saying, oy vey, why is this happening to me? It's just a much better approach in life. When someone else is hurting, don't go tell them that Hashem's making them a better person. Don't ever do that. You put their arm around them and you sympathize with them. But to ourselves, if we should be'ez Hashem to get the strength to do that, that's an amazing way to live your life. Second-class pleasure. The joy of greatness. It's the breakthrough experience of your life where you're doing something that couldn't be done before. It's the koyach hachidush. Absolutely fantastic. But it's nothing compared to first-class pleasure. First-class pleasure. A number of years ago, there was a best-selling author whose name was J.K. Rowling. I don't know if you heard of her. I want to try to gauge what kind of crowd is here today, so that's why I threw out the name. Okay, so best-selling author. Announcement goes out, Midtown Manhattan, during the lunch hour. J.K. Rowling's going to be doing a book signing at B. Dalton's in Manhattan. So, understandably, a line of some 350 people snake throughout the store, like go all the way throughout, all waiting for the people, they're going to buy the books, overpay for the books, to have the schus of having her autograph the books. Now, how does the line look? 350 people, everyone's eager, and everyone's waiting patiently, except for the 18th guy online. He's very excited. He's shifting his leg from one wait for one leg to the other leg. I can't wait to meet J.K. Rowling. I've read every word she's ever written. I know what she wrote when she was a struggling waitress. This is the greatest day of my life. What's the response of the other people in line to this guy? Take a step back. You don't want to do it this nutcase, right? Okay. How does the line progress? J.K. Rowling says, what's your name? The guy says, Ralph. Dear Ralph, have a nice life. Love, J.K. And that's the way it progresses. And everything's running smoothly until it's the 18th guy's turn. And suddenly he gets there. She says, what's your name? And he says, Joe. Dear Joe, have a nice life. Love, J.K. And before she has a chance to say next, he explodes. So I can't believe I have the privilege of living in the same galaxy as you. This is the most wonderful day of my life. I know what you wrote by heart. This is the most dying. I'm going to tell my grandchildren about this. And what does she say? That's nice. Next. Why did the man tell the author about how he felt about her? For her sake or his own? His own. Listen carefully. The most amazing allure, the most amazing desire that every human being has is to transcend our mundane, everyday lives and to reach out and contact the unlimited. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're programmed with that. To the extent that we're living lives and we're not in regular contact, we don't have enough of the spirituality of contacting HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what happens is HaKadosh Baruch Hu builds an alarm system in our bodies and it's called boredom. And it drives us absolutely crazy. And when you're really bored, it's your neshama saying, give me something real instead of all this narishkeit. And when we're not getting it, we turn to the counterfeit. And the counterfeit is looking at someone who's just bigger than me in some way of measure. Which might mean he swings the bat better than I do. Or it might mean he plays the guitar better than I do. Or it might mean his face graces more covers of more magazines than mine does. And therefore I begin to worship that entity. And if you think it's not worship that we do in the counterfeit, you're wrong. It's absolutely worship. What the Goyim are doing, engraving other people's images on their bodies, throwing gifts of flowers and clothing at people performing on stage, it's absolute worship. Because we have a tremendous need to reach out and make contact with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And instead what we're doing is we're trying to make do with the counterfeit, which in the end, those people that are being worshipped are a lot sicker than the people who are worshiping them. People with disposable marriages and disposable lives, it's absolutely horrific what's going on. But we have such a need that we'll embrace even the sickest of the sick. We're going to embrace them. because I have such a need for that. Every one of us is capable at any point in time on reaching out and touching HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You do it through tefillah. You do it through Limud Torah, and you could even do it, says the Rambam, by observing nature. Every one of us has an ability to do that. And when we do it, we do one of the most amazing things in our life is we quiet the inner conflict that we have inside when we do it on a regular basis. Because ultimately, when you do it and you feel it, you're able to daven with a completeness, with a wholeness. What it means is that you've limited the things that distance you from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. After Chalila, someone does a terrible Aveira, it's very difficult to get up and daven. Trust me, it's very difficult. Everyone knows that. What does it take to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? HaKadosh Baruch Hu asks for Kedusha and Tahara. What's the effort? It's a lifelong effort of Kedusha and Tahara. But what's the reward? First-class pleasure. If you've been to any Adam Gadol in your life that you know for sure is an Adam Gadol, you know for sure, you'll see an inner peace that reigns by them, which is unbelievable. There's a calm that's like incredible. That's what we all want. We want to feel complete and whole with ourselves. We want to feel complete and whole with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what we're looking for in life. Every one of us wants that more than anything else in life. They surveyed young people, most of whom said they didn't believe in God. They say, what would be the experience in your life? And 85%, this was a Newsweek magazine a number of years ago, 85% of the kids responded and said, meeting God. We know it. But it's too bad we waste this absolutely sublime thing on the terrible counterfeits that exist all around us, because that's what we all want. First class pleasure. It's what it's. I don't know anybody who'd rather fly fifth class when they can go first class. In our lives, it is important for us to recognize what the comparative values of the pleasures are and insist that we go first class all the time. I'll end with a famous mashal that comes still from the Gedolim of Europe. There was once a farmer, and this farmer was not very successful at his farm. He eked out a living from the farm, and he thought he could do better. So he brought in a farming expert into his farm, and he said, tell me, what am I doing wrong? I want to make more money from the farm. And the guy said, I've examined your farm for 3 days, and you are the worst farmer I've ever seen. He said, but I'm making a living. How do I do it? Because you got the greatest mouth I've ever seen. You have such a mouthpiece. You're negotiating lower prices when you buy and higher prices when you sell than anybody I know. So what should I do? He says, sell the farm for a one-time windfall profit. You'll get a lot of money from the real estate. Then take the money and buy crops from your neighbor farmers. After all, your skill is negotiating over the crops. So you'll be able to have a lot more crops to negotiate over if you sell and you buy crops with someone else. The guy said, it's a great idea, and that's what he did. And he started to prosper, just like the guy said he would. One day he realizes how many farms can he visit in one day and schlep all these heavy bundles to his wagon to sell in the marketplace to negotiate at a higher price. He's not such a big, strong guy. So he's limited in the amount of farms. So he goes out and he hires the biggest, strongest guy he can find. And this big guy goes ahead and works for him, and he has tripled his business. And he paid the guy a penny for every bushel that he took from the farm and put on the wagon. So every day he'd come to work with a few rolls of pennies, and every time he deposited a bushel, put the penny in the can, they counted up the money. At the end of the day, that's how much money the guy got. He became extremely wealthy, and he felt a little bad. I'm doing all the work, he's doing all the work, and I get all the money. I'm going to give him a sugar raise, because I can, why not? And instead of giving him a penny a bushel, he started paying him $10 a bushel. But he's not going to peel off a 10 every time he brings a bushel. So what he does is, they're the same system with the can. He takes the penny and throws it in the can. At the end of the day, however many pennies there were, each one becomes a $10 bill. And life was very good. One day, this big, strong guy, who wasn't very bright, sees that his boss isn't looking, and he goes over to the can, and he swipes the pennies, and he puts them in his pocket. At the end of the day, the boss sits down with him to make the cheshbon. There's a fraction of the pennies that he usually has, and if anything, he worked even harder today. So the boss figures it out. He's smart, figured it out. He goes, oh, it was a shaita, Mr. Vist. Don't you realize that at the end of the day, every one of these pennies is a $10 bill? That's us. Every one of us, when we do Chalila and Aveirah, what are we doing? We are usually accepting a fifth-class pleasure. All of the things that we shouldn't do, generally speaking, they're relegated to the realm of fifth-class pleasure. Machalas asuras, whatever it's going to be. I don't want to go into more detail, but whatever it's going to be, it's always a fifth-class, but that's all it is. Why would anyone in his right mind cave in and to accept a fifth-class pleasure when instead he can get a first-class pleasure? What is that Kadosh Baruch Hu? Kedusha and Tahara. The more you withstand the urge, the greater the first-class pleasure is. The more you're standing up for first-class pleasure, the greater you're going to enjoy it. The more serious nefesh you put in. Remember, the guy gives away even the third-class pleasure, gives away the $50,000. The rest of your life you're going to talk about. It's going to be the defining moment of your life. and we just give it away like that, that's what we're doing. We're sacrificing our Kedusha and Tahara for fifth-class pleasure. You have to be out of your mind to do it. Ein Adam chayte ela imke nichnas by ruach shtus. Chazal tell us, you got to be a little crazy to do an Avera. Because if you really sit down and you compute matan schar shel mitzvahs, we would never ever do it. You have now a fantastic system that whenever Chalila you have a doubt about what to engage in, what activity, you sit down and say, what's the greatest pleasure I get if I Chalila do the Avera? What's the greatest pleasure I get if I don't? And it'll help you choose far more wisely. Kadosh Baruch Hu should help us. We should make all the right choices. Beprat, each one of us, and of course, Bechlal Be'ezer Hashem, Klal Yisrael makes the right choice. Kadosh Baruch Hu rewards us. B'chal Mili D'Meitav, and B'yaskel Tzedek B'meher V'Yameinu. Amen.